You ever have that feeling that you're stuck in a loop? The same argument, the same misunderstanding, the same lousy feeling over and over again with someone you really care about. It's totally maddening, right? Well, today, we're going to pull back the curtain on these invisible scripts that can kind of run our lives and our relationships. So let's get into it. So I was having coffee with a friend, and I was in the middle of complaining about this fight I just had with my partner, Arjun. And right in the middle of my own sentence, I just stopped. It was like I could hear myself, and the words coming out of my mouth felt rehearsed. It was this chilling moment of deja vu. I realized this isn't a new fight, this is a rerun. And that realization just sent me down this total rabbit hole. I mean, why? If we know the pattern, if we can literally feel that bad ending coming a mile away, why do we keep playing our parts? Why can't we just stop? Well, it turns out there's a really powerful psychological reason for this, and honestly, understanding it changes absolutely everything. My friend Anjali, she knew exactly what I was talking about. She and her husband had been having basically the same fight for 3 years straight. And I had my own little dance with Arjun. It always started the same way. I'd feel a little insecure, he'd miss some subtle hint I dropped, I'd get all distant, he'd get frustrated, then we'd fight, and eventually we'd make up. Only to do the whole thing all over again a month later. This is honestly the perfect way to describe it. You know when you're watching a movie and you're yelling at the screen, like, don't go in there! Can't you see what's happening? But the characters, they can't hear you. They're just following the script. In those moments, I felt exactly like that character, completely powerless to change the ending, even though I knew deep down exactly what was coming. And then I stumbled onto this concept that felt like someone just flipped on the lights in a pitch black room. It was from a psychiatrist named Eric Byrne, and he called these repeating patterns psychological games. And I gotta be clear about something. When he said games, he did not mean anything fun. Yeah, that word sinister is key. These are not just bad habits. Byrne defined them as these really complex, totally unconscious maneuvers we use to avoid real intimacy, to confirm our own worst beliefs about ourselves, and to end up with a familiar but bad feeling. On the surface, they look like normal conversations, but underneath, there's something else entirely. And what's wild is that all this chaos actually follows a really predictable structure. Every single game has 6 rules. First, it follows a script. Second, everyone unconsciously plays a role. You've got the helpless victim, the noble rescuer, or the blaming persecutor. Third, it involves ulterior transactions, which just means what's being said isn't what's really being said. Then comes the switch. This is the dramatic twist where the roles suddenly flip. All of this leads to the negative payoff, where everyone feels bad, but in a weirdly familiar way. And finally, of course, it repeats endlessly. And this quote just nails the trap we're in. We think we're just innocent bystanders in our own drama, that these things are just happening to us. But the truth is, we are active participants. We might be unconscious of it, but we're the actors and we're reading lines from a script we don't even know we've memorized. Okay, so how do these games actually work on a mechanical level? Well, Bernet came up with this simple but incredibly powerful formula that basically decodes the whole sequence. And I promise you, once you see it, you'll start spotting these games everywhere. Let's break it down. Here it is. It all starts with a hook. That's when someone kind of dangles some psychological bait. The other person has a gimmick, a specific vulnerability or a need that makes them bite down on that hook. That leads to a predictable response, and now both players are locked in. Then comes the big dramatic switch, and finally, everyone collects their negative payoff. It's so simple, kind of elegant, and devastatingly accurate. Okay, let's look at a total classic. It's called Why Don't You? Yes, But. So Suresh comes in with the hook. He's presenting a problem, and he sounds like he wants help, right? My boss is impossible. Lakshmi's gimmick is her need to be a helpful rescuer, so she bites. Why don't you talk to him? But with every single yes but, Suresh shoots down her advice. See, he isn't actually looking for solutions. He's unconsciously proving his point that he's helpless. Finally, Lakshmi gets fed up and flips into a persecutor. That's the switch. Fine, just keep complaining then. And the payoff? Suresh feels justified that nobody gets it, and Lakshmi feels totally unappreciated. Both of them walk away feeling frustrated, but in that familiar, predictable way. I know, This all sounds completely nuts, right? Why on earth would anyone choose to play these painful games? Well, it turns out they're actually serving some really important but hidden psychological purposes for us. Okay, so check this out. Games give us a way to structure our time. It's a predictable, if negative, way to interact with people. They also confirm our life script. That's the core story we tell ourselves about who we are. They also help us avoid real intimacy, which, let's be honest, can feel terrifying. They give us a way to manage forbidden feelings like anger or sadness by creating drama. And maybe the weirdest one, they create predictable misery, which, for a lot of us, actually feels safer than the unknown. So, this is the crucial part. This is the big mental shift you have to make. You start to see that you're not just a victim of these patterns, you're actually an active player. And I know that can be a really tough pill to swallow, but it's also where all your power comes from. Because if you're a player, it means you can also choose to stop playing. For me, this realization was a huge turning point. I started to look at my own life, hunting for the scripts, the roles, the payoffs. And that's when I found a big one, a game I had been playing my entire life without ever knowing it. I realized I had been playing this game with my own father for years. I called it stupid. It would happen whenever we talked about things like my career or money. I would unconsciously act kind of confused and helpless, and like clockwork, he would step into the role of the wise, all-knowing parent and start lecturing me. And the payoff? I'd walk away feeling totally inadequate, which just confirmed this old, deep-seated belief that I wasn't smart enough to handle my own life. Once I saw the pattern, I just couldn't unsee it. So the next time he called, I was ready. He threw out the usual hoke about my investments, getting ready to launch into his lecture. The old me would have just played my part, you know? But this time, I refused the role. I stayed in what Byrne calls the adult ego state, just calm, factual. I didn't take the bait. I just said something like, I appreciate your concern. I've done my research on this. And the game just fizzled out. It stopped. And for the first time, maybe ever, we had a real adult-to-adult conversation, and it felt incredible. That one little victory just proved to me that this wasn't just some interesting theory. It was a real, practical toolkit for changing my life. It's not about blaming anyone. It's about taking responsibility for your role in the dynamic and then choosing to do something different. So how can you start doing this? First, learn to spot the hook, that initial bait, and just refuse to bite. Second, try to consciously stay in that calm, rational adult state of mind. It's really hard to play a dramatic game with someone who refuses to be dramatic. Third, consciously change your role. If you're always the rescuer, just for today, stop rescuing. And maybe most important of all, ask yourself the big question. What is my payoff here? What is that familiar, bad feeling I keep collecting? Answering that question reveals the whole secret motivation behind the game. And this right here is the ultimate takeaway. These games are designed to be unwinnable. They are literally rigged so that everyone feels bad in the end. So the only winning move is to recognize that a game is being played and to respectfully decline the invitation. True freedom is stepping off the game board completely. So I'll just leave you with this question. Think about that one frustrating, repeating pattern in your own life. You know the one, that argument you keep having. Now that you have the formula, you have the power to see the script for what it is. So what game have you been playing? And what's the first step you're going to take to walk off that stage?